this year, first time in a long time, you're facing opposition. First of all, how do you feel about that? And aside from your experience, why should people send you back to the House?
Well, it is my first time in 8 years since my first election where I ran against 3 other folks that I've had an opponent. And listen, I'm not taking any opponent lightly. Anybody that's got their name on the ballot against me, I need to take seriously. And so, and I was a little surprised, but it's good for you. It's healthy for us all to have someone challenge us and make sure stretch us. And but what I hope folks will see is that I'm the same person I was 8 years ago. I ran 8 years ago that I wasn't a professional politician, that I was a business owner, small business owner. I owned 20 restaurants. And today, I'm still not a professional politician. I'm still a restaurant owner. Customer service is in my background. That's part of some of the success I think we've seen in our restaurants. And I bring that to politics as well too. You call me with an issue as a constituent, I need to take care of that for you. You've got a problem with state government, I need to be there ready to be available for you. So I hope folks have been proud of what I've done over the last 8 years, worked hard, tackled some tough issues, have not just let things lay to the side, but have dealt with issues that people hadn't come to conclusions on before, like consolidation, and when we've dealt with it. And so I hope folks will see that's who I am. I'm going to fight for an issue when I get in it, and hopefully see it to completion.
And in terms of issues, what do you have left to get accomplished? I mean, you've tackled consolidation. You did great, the Renaissance Act, you did that this year. You've done texting and driving. You've got a pretty long record. So what's left for you? Well,
I think there's always new issues that pop up. For instance, this medical cannabis issue this past session was not even on my radar, come last January. But so there's always something that comes up that you maybe need to deal with. But I can tell you now, I gave strong consideration to not running again. And getting involved with this medical cannabis issue really tugged at me and made me realize I cannot quit on these families. When I had to make the decision of whether to run again, we were not to the finish line on the medical cannabis issue, and I just knew I've got to go finish the job for these families. And so it kind of spurred me on to run again. Plus, we've got some things on the consolidation issue that I think we need to, maybe some tweaks in the charter, maybe some issues that we need to address to make the consolidated government better. So I got energized again to run again for another 2 years, and I'm eager and ready to get back up there next January if reelected by the good citizens of District 141.
You mentioned the consolidation issue. There was a big divide last session, not this previous session, but the year before that, between you and the other members of the delegation over this nonpartisan issue. You say you don't play politics, but some might have called that a political move. So what do you want to say about that issue, about how that all played out?
That's a fair question. And those that don't know the behind-the-scenes wheeling and dealing we did among the local delegation could have accused me, and they did accuse me of kind of trying to pull one over the other members of the delegation. And that was the furthest thing from the truth. We were very upfront with other members of the delegation that at some point, if consolidation passed, we were going to address the nonpartisan issue. Every other consolidated government has nonpartisan elections. Every other city in the entire state, I think with the exception of one small city, has nonpartisan elections. We made the decision, I did personally myself, that I wanted to push for nonpartisan elections from the very get-go after consolidation passed, because I felt like it was important that the very first slate of elected officials be the most qualified folks we could get. We needed the best citizens on that first commission. And the way we were going to get the best citizens, the best elected official, was by nonpartisan elections. And so I knew that when I fought for that and took the risk of pushing that we were going to get criticized for it. But to me, it was worth the criticism in order to make sure we had the best qualified officials in that first commission.
Now, even though it was a year ago that whole nonpartisan issue played out, the community has kind of been dealing with the issues, the voting mishaps here and there. Do you feel like that's going to hurt you in this election?
It could. I think most folks realize the intent was right. I mean, we want to make sure we have the most qualified folks there. The voting mishaps from the districts, I mean, unfortunately, it got a lot of high profile, but that happens quite often, actually, in every reapportionment time. And so I think they've got them worked out. I hope they have. The Board of Elections, we'll find out here on May 20th. But no, listen, I understand shots are going to be fired for any mistakes at me. and that's part of the gig that I sign up for. But I think most folks will see, and I think they can judge by my 8 years in elected office, that I've always tried to do what was in the best interest of our community, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well too. And so I'm hoping folks will, as a result of that, want to vote for me again on May 20th.
And we had a lot of interesting topics this session. Gun bill, that HB 60, that was a big bill, and a lot of people across the nation calling it one of the most extreme gun bills in U.S. history. You supported it.
I did.
Is there anything you would have written differently? How do you feel about that bill now that you've got the platform to talk about it?
No, I did vote for it, supported it. Listen, there's a very diverse opinion about guns in our state. There are just as many folks who think we didn't go far enough on guns as there are folks who think we went too far. And so that's the balance of an elected official. How do you deal with the wishes of an electorate that is very diverse? And I feel very strongly about the Second Amendment and the right of our citizens to bear arms. I think that is a fundamental right that's built into our Constitution. And I think that this bill, HB 60, provided some additional rights, as they should be, under that Second Amendment for people who have undergone a thorough background check, who have been fingerprinted, who are qualified to be a concealed weapon permit holder. This is not just anybody off the street getting the right to carry a gun. They have to be a concealed weapon permit holder. And so I think a lot of folks don't understand that. And so I supported the bill, and I'm not sure I would change anything at this point on the bill.
All right, moving on now, education, another big talker this session. We've got the Common Core. How do you feel, about the Common Core in terms of, should Georgia stick with it? Should Georgia find a new plan? Education's a big issue, especially locally, not only statewide.
It is, and we've, especially in Bibb County, I'm so proud of Superintendent Steve Smith, who's done a great job locally, and I think we're making some changes on the Board of Education as well too. I also would like to maybe see us look at downsizing the Board of Education. Maybe there's 8 members now, maybe going to 7 or 5 members. We'll take a look at that. Common Core, it's a tough subject. I believe the original intent, it was started by the states in order to really built for military families, so that somebody in Kentucky, when they moved to Missouri, would be able to have the same standards applied for their kids' education. So I think the intent was right. Once the federal government started getting their entanglements into it, I think it started going a little sideways. We tried to make some changes this past session. We had got a lot of feedback from teachers that hey, those standards have been in place for 2 or 3 years now. We're just getting comfortable with most of them. Don't do a complete overhaul at this point. And so that's why we didn't pass any legislation this past session. I think we need to continue to look at it. Decisions need to be made at the local level, not at the federal level as far as education, and I think that's where our focus needs to be.
You talk a lot about the local level, and that's where decisions need to be made. So in terms of your district specifically, Bibb County, you mentioned consolidation. In terms of Monroe County, what's a big area of need there that you'd like to address?
Well, I know they've looked at consolidation as well too. I think they've seen the success of Macon and Bibb County and the success of that consolidation effort. So there's been a lot of discussion with folks asking me, well, should we do the same thing for Monroe and for Forsyth County? And I think the business community has expressed an interest in taking a look at that. So I think that's going to be an important issue. I think Monroe County is just like Bibb. How do we grow jobs? How do we create an environment that's conducive for growth? I think that issue is important regionally, though, too. We can't just look at Monroe, Bibb, Crawford, Houston, Jones, Peach as separate entities. We need to look at this as a hub area for job opportunity and for growth. Just like there's the Tri-City area up in North Carolina, why couldn't we have the Tri-County area, the strength of the public safety hub in Monroe County, the educational and medical facilities that we have here of higher learning, like Mercer in Bibb County, and then the base in Houston County. I mean, boy, we have got some real strengths that if we combined together, and if we got our local elected officials to think regionally and not be so territorial about particular areas, how much better that could be for everybody. People who work at the base live in Monroe County and Bibb County. People who may have a job in Monroe County live in Houston County.
Right.
I mean, so we need to think regionally, and I think that needs to be a real priority for our area.
And in terms of your medical marijuana bill, big talker this year, went all the way down to the wire where You know, a lot of people thought it was going to pass. It was going to be a big piece of legislation this year, but it didn't. What is next for that bill?
Well, it was a real blow to the gut when that thing did not pass, and it's been even tougher the last several weeks as we've seen other states that were doing exactly what we were trying to do pass legislation. Florida's passed some, Alabama's passed some, Kentucky's passed some, South Carolina's in the midst of it, Tennessee passed legislation. Everybody around us did what we did, what we tried to do, and we couldn't. So we're going to tee it back up. In the meantime, sometimes you learn from your failures. We clearly failed in not getting this legislation passed. So we said, okay, you know what? If we can't come up with a solution through legislation, let's come up with a solution that works for families. And so we created the Journey of Hope Fund. You can find out about it at www.journeyofhopefund.com, where we're going to raise money to be able to provide financial assistance for families who want to move to Colorado or another state where they could obtain medical cannabis for their children with seizure disorders. It clearly works. The families that have already moved out there and obtained this medical cannabis are seeing drastic reduction in seizures for their children and drastic improvement in quality of life for their kids. And so we said, okay, let's figure out a way to send them out there. We've already got several families, 2 families lined up ready to go in the next 30 days, about 3 or 4 other families that are making plans to go. And so so in the meantime, before next January, we're trying to provide a solution for these families. Hopefully come January, we'll tee it back up and be able to provide some legislation that will provide an alternative for families here in Georgia.